This episode is brought to you by Toad Ranch. Toad Ranch specializes in designing and building premium reptile habitats for everyone from dedicated hobbyists to zoos, nature centers, and other professional institutions. Known for their exceptional craftsmanship, fully customizable design, and unmatched attention to detail, Toad Ranch has become one of the most trusted names in reptile enclosures. Whether you're housing a single pet or an entire collection, Toad Ranch creates habitats that are built to last and designed with both keeper and animal in mind. And for listeners of the podcast, Toad Ranch is offering a special discount for a limited time. Use promo code SSP15 at checkout to receive 15% off all destination backgrounds and baskin hides. If you've been thinking of upgrading your enclosure, now is the perfect time to do it. That's SSP15 for 15% off destination backgrounds and baskin hides only at Toad Ranch. All right, and welcome into the Scoots and Scales podcast. I am one of your hosts, Channing, and I'm joined by Luke Daniel. How's it going, buddy?
So far, so good. How about yourself?
Nice. Yeah, doing pretty good. I actually, this is the start of my third recording already over the past 2 days, which is why I almost said I'm your host, Channing, because yesterday I started a recording with John Rice. Everything went wrong with that, and so we had to scrap that, but I was by myself to start. And then after that, we tried to record a video that will actually be what we're going to talk about today, but I was by myself for that. And recording about an hour of me talking sounded like the world's worst filibuster, especially about a topic that needs a lot of discussion. So we've decided to scramble together and try and record a show with the two of us today to actually fill it out a little better. So I'm excited for that. So you'll notice today's episode will be different. Last week we talked about how we were going to be recording with John Rice. And we made an attempt. We tried. To no fault of John's, we ran into technological issues beyond our worst nightmare, and it would not work at all. It just wouldn't record. It was so bad that we are now using a different recording platform because it was so frustrating. So we're breaking in StreamYard today, and we're giving that a shot to see if we like it a little better. So we heard good things about it. So hopefully this one works a little better for us. So today's episode will be different than what we had originally planned. And Luke, why don't you tell them what we're going to be talking about today? Because it's a pretty interesting one.
That's exactly what I was about to say, was that we had a pretty interesting topic for today. I guess this is getting released the same week.
Yeah. 2 days after this.
2 days after this. So getting released the same week of our subject's release date as well, which is going to be The Monsters of God, the HBO docuseries about smuggling in the reptile hobby, especially in some of the earlier days there.
Absolutely. So a very polarizing topic with a lot of opinions on both sides of the aisle as to what that topic's going to bring. And so kind of our intention is to give you guys our feelings on it, kind of break down some of the aspects of the show, and just kind of hopefully provide you with an opinion that maybe will either leave you feeling way worse about it or way better about it. So it just depends on how you're going to receive it. But we hope the content is good and that you guys enjoy it. We did kind of put this together last second, so hope it doesn't seem too scramble brain. But before we get into all that, we do have a few things to cover, kind of our pre-show stuff here. So there are some potential changes coming to the podcast. We just talked about how we're changing our recording platform, but even more than that, see, when we first started the show, we were going to do 2 segments, and we're still planning on doing sort of 2 segments, but things could change pretty drastically depending on one thing that's coming up. So we may be joining a podcast network, a reptile podcast network. Can't specify exactly which one yet. We're just waiting to see if everything works out. If that does work out, we're going to be effectively scrapping the Talk and Shop segment. This episode will be classified as a Talk and Shop episode. However, this is going to fall significantly more into what our Legend series would become. So if we join this network, basically what will happen is we'll switch to pretty much doing just the Legend series. And Luke really likes the legend of like the mythical monsters and stuff that may or may not have existed that are reptile related or reptile adjacent. So he would be kind of heading that up. And one thing that I found a lot of passion and a lot of interest in is the theme of today's episode, which is controversy and history and things like reptile smuggling, and basically everything encompassed by the Monsters of God docuseries. So we would be kind of talking and alternating, maybe not perfect one to one, but an alternating back and forth of those two ideas, and covering some legends when it comes to legends of animals that may or may not have existed, or dramatic stories, or legends of certain events, whether it be crime or whether it be people who did really good things early on in herpiculture, and just kind of covering all that fun stuff. Kind of sticking to a strictly true crime vibe to the podcast, just maybe some different levels of what we're talking about. So that is a little bit of an update coming to the podcast, potentially. Maybe we'll have to see how that goes. But Luke, do you have any personal updates since the last time we recorded?
Yeah, it's been a busy couple of weeks. Got to go on a really nice trip to Florida.
Nice.
Got to do a little bit of herping down there, which anybody who's heard me speak knows how much I love turtles. So that's mostly what I was looking for down there. Got to see a lot of gopher tortoises, which was really encouraging. Even got to see some little babies, some smaller than a baseball.
Oh, that's cool.
So that was really encouraging given their recent status change to critically endangered. As well as got to see a lot of green sea turtles down there as well. So those were kind of the two main highlights of that for me. But as well as got to help out at an event at my local church. Got to bring some snakes over there and do like a little table set up and have kids come up and touch the snakes and learn a little bit about them. It's kind of funny. My girlfriend was there helping me out, and she got her first snake bite.
Oh,
And
nice.
of all things, was a feeding bite from an indigo.
What a great first one. I've never been bitten by one.
I haven't either.
I've heard it sucks. So we need to
It
ask
looked
her
like
about
it
that.
sucked.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we need to see
No,
what
it was
her opinion was.
my adult female Mexican indigo kind of latched onto her hand there, and it left a little bit of a gnarly bite. I think it looked way worse than it actually was, but that was
It's
interesting
kind
to
of neat
listen.
because
Yeah.
my first snake bite, was an eastern garter snake, and I believe that was yours as well, wasn't it?
99% of people I talk to say
Yeah,
Eastern
what
Garter
a cool
snake.
first snake bite. I mean, a
Mhm.
Mexican indigo snake. I mean, I think it'd be about like an anaconda or something like that is the
Yeah.
first one. I mean, it'd be hard to beat that. So yeah,
So that
pretty
was
neat
pretty
first
crazy.
snake
But
bite.
rest of the event went really well. Got to meet a lot of folks. Got to have a really great night interacting with snakes, and I had my red eared slider there as well for kicks and giggles. But that's about it for personal updates for me.
Nice. Well, personal updates on my end is that the guest family household has grown, but not by a human. So maybe, actually, by the time this comes out, maybe because this will be published tomorrow morning, and there's a chance I could have to leave this episode at any given moment now. My son could be born at any minute now, so maybe he's born by the time this episode is published. But what has for sure increased in number in the household is my Clifford's rat snakes. And my little snakes, they're so adorable. I had 5 of them hatch, and that's Spalerosophus diadema cliffordi. But I'm referring to those specifically as Clifford's rat snakes. And I'm going to give a little bit of a spiel here because I gave this during my episode that I recorded by myself last night, and I enjoyed it. I don't know if anybody else will enjoy it, but you're going to listen to it, Luke, because I had to do it by myself and you abandoned me. So the little bit of the spiel was basically I'm calling these guys Clifford's rat snakes instead of Egyptian diadem rat snakes or Clifford's diadem rat snakes or whatever you may want to call them because these snakes have a huge range. Their range is all the way from like Western Egypt all the way to like in India, like Northeast India. So they're a huge range map. And in that same range, there's several species of snakes that fall underneath Spalerosophus diadema, and they all look pretty similar to Spalerosophus diadema cliffordi. One of the only ways that you can really know for sure which species you have is by locality. And I am fortunate enough that all 3 of my snakes, I do have information as to the general area they were collected, but I at least know that they were collected in Egypt. So we do have like a true locality for these guys. And so I know for sure that these guys are Clifford's diadem rat snakes, but because diadem rat snakes are so commonly associated as just this like junk import snake that's pretty cheap, I would like to kind of try and reintroduce them as a legitimate pet snake that can be a good captive. So hopefully it changes the perspective. That doesn't mean I'm going to try and sell them for a ridiculous amount of money. They're still going to be affordable. They're still going to be pretty cheap, assuming I can get them to eat. But I just want them to be appreciated and treated like a little bit more than just some wild caught junk snake, because they really are just a super fun social snake. So that is why I'm calling them Clifford's rat snakes, and I'm super excited about those. So if you were interested in learning any more about them, feel free to hit me up on Instagram and Facebook. I love talking about these guys, and also if you would like to learn more about them, I have several posts up about them as well, so you can see the babies, see some stuff like that. But that is my main personal update that I've got. But there was something that I wanted to kind of shout out, that because it took place over this last week, and that was the 50th anniversary of IHS, the International Herpetological Symposium. I unfortunately wasn't able to make it to IHS this year. It was for the best reason imaginable, because it was the potential of my son being born, and so I absolutely could not risk missing that. But I kind of wanted to give a shout out because it was announced who the next president is going to be. So one, wanted to shout out Mike Clarkson, the president before, just absolutely a great guy, someone who's spent a lot of time conversating with me, even when he has, you know, I'm sure way more important things he could be spending his time doing. He's been willing to spend that time talking to me, and he's done an incredible job leading IHS for the past couple of years, and he's got one more year of leading it. But then after that, it's going to be taken over by Zach Loftman. So just big congratulations to him. Very well deserved. That's leaving IHS in some great hands, and I'm super excited for the future of IHS, and fingers crossed I'll be able to be there next year and actually be able to see Mike off on his last year being president of IHS. So I just wanted to shout that out real quick, and just say how much I appreciate that organization, everything they've done, and also what they've done for the history of herpetoculture. So they started expos, if you didn't know that. Good thing to look into.
Well, speaking of the history of herpetoculture, that docu-series is going to dive into that, isn't it?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's yeah, the docu-series is definitely going to dive into a lot of the history of herpetoculture, specifically from the 70s on to like modern day. And we've kind of hinted at it a little bit that this docu series, Monsters of God, is a very controversial topic. I've seen opinions, extremely strong opinions, on both sides of the aisle. And kind of, I'm curious because I have a feeling that you and I probably don't agree on this, which is funny because we usually agree on most things except for the size of snakes. We don't agree on that at all. I'm always the snake was way bigger. It was 7 foot, and Luke's always knows 4 foot. So that's the one area we disagree most of the time. But I'm usually right, so it's okay. But this show, I want to know what your opinions are on that. So, what are your initial feelings? Even if it's changed, like what were your initial feelings when you first saw the trailer? Like, what are your feelings about it now? Kind of, how do you feel?
Especially upon seeing the trailer, I had, I don't know, almost like a feeling of dread watching this
Yep.
trailer. I think a large part of that is kind of, and it's something that we'll touch on a little bit more in depth later on in the podcast, but it's kind of seeing the implications and the legacy that a similar docuseries that the same creators made on Netflix several years ago, a little known show called Tiger King, kind of seeing the legacy that left behind on a lot of people with big cats, and kind of how some views of a lot of people, a lot of politicians and things got changed of big cat keepers, not only personal keepers, but large zoos and things like that. Yep. And so I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little nervous to see if this will change some people's perception that have a lot of power going around.
So we definitely have opposing views on this. And I could not be further from that. When I first saw it, I saw the online outrage about this, and I wanted to agree because you're in the majority by far. Like 99% of people I've seen will agree with you. So maybe that makes you right, or whatever. So, but when I first saw it,
if I could stop you there before I got yours, I will say there was that kind of overwhelming feeling of dread. But if anybody hasn't seen the trailer, I highly recommend going to see it because it does look extremely entertaining. So as nervous as I am to what the reaction of this documentary will be, I am extremely excited. I will be refreshing HBO, waiting for the first episode to drop.
Yeah.
So I'm also very excited to watch it myself there. But yeah, I felt like that's a little bit better tie into what you're about to say there.
Yeah. So when I first saw people reacting to it online, I was like, oh gosh, like this is going to be terrible. But I never really believed that. I think it just was like a hive mind thing for me of like, these people I respect are saying this, so I need to believe this because they obviously know what they're talking about. And not saying they're wrong, But I'd like to offer kind of a total opposite side of the coin there. So
Hmm.
I'm super excited for this. I think it's not going to be bad. I don't think it's going to be detrimental to the hobby. And there's a lot of reasons that we're going to get into. And I don't want to kind of spoil that, but I do want to offer just one. I'm going to try not to be too long winded on this because I talked about this for like 20 minutes last night by myself. This is a big chunk of it. But these worlds are so different. You know,
Hmm.
we look at Tiger King and we look at Chimp Crazy, the two documentaries that have been made so far by the same guy. They're on different planets.
Oh
Like
yeah.
those, the level of care and the level of danger and the level of intelligence those animals have and their needs and their habitat and all that stuff is so far and away different from reptiles. I mean, you think about the biggest reptiles that you can keep in captivity, and the most demanding reptiles you can keep in captivity are probably going to be like Komodo dragons, large crocodilians, you know, reticulated pythons, anacondas, things like that. They're very difficult to keep. There is a certain aspect of danger. I'm going to be honest. I've seen a lot nicer alligators than I have lions in my day. You know, like I just don't think they're relatable. It's apples to oranges in my eyes. Like you
Hmm.
can't compare them. And another thing is when you look up the statistics, it's 4.5 to 5% of households in America have pet reptiles. So few people have pet big cats and chimps in the United States that the percentage is less than zero. So it's well into the decimal places after that. So it's a negligible community comparison. And the reptile community has a much better opinion. Like, when was the last time you went to a big cat expo?
It's been a few weeks.
Yeah, been
No,
a few
it's
weeks.
never
Yeah,
happened. It's never
yeah.
happened.
You ever heard of a chimp expo?
Nope.
No. When was the last time you went to a reptile expo?
Oh
Probably
no,
been a little bit. You've probably been a little bit, but you've had the opportunities at least. Like you
I've
could have
definitely had
gone to one.
opportunities. The last time I went to
Yeah,
one was probably Kalubert Fest.
nice.
That was probably the last one.
But the point remains of like they're just totally different. You're not going to see billboards for stuff like this, especially not in the eastern United States.
No.
So they're totally different worlds. And I think to
Mhm.
think that they're going to be treated the same way just doesn't make sense to me. Not to say that I'm right, but that's just where my brain is and kind of my initial feelings are. And so I definitely have a little bit more of an optimistic view. And I would like to kind of see. I know you don't have maybe the same optimistic view. You're looking forward to watching it, but maybe you're not super excited as to what it will yield. So if you could draw it up perfectly as to like this show accomplishing exactly what you would want it to accomplish in a perfect world, what would that look like to you?
I would hope it would be polarizing on kind of the good and bad of herpetoculture there, right? That it really does highlight some very good keepers who know what they're doing, take very good care of their animals, and that it definitely highlights some bad people who have attack cobras to protect their drugs. It's that would kind of be my hope, is that there would be a clear black and white for the sake of entertainment. I say for the sake of entertainment and education distinction there.
Yeah.
My fear is that there will be no good side,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm hoping that's not the case. We'll see.
Yeah. So if I was to be like super optimistic about what this would accomplish, I've already said I don't think it would be very bad. But if I was to like get it to accomplish something golden in my eyes, it wouldn't even necessarily rely on the pod or not the podcast, the docu series being perfect.
Mm-hmm.
It would more rely on it not being overtly against herpetoculture. So
Okay.
one thing that is important in my or one thing I think is important to note is the guy who's making the show is involved in herpetoculture.
Mm-hmm.
He's not just some dude who hates animals in captivity. Like he's somebody who's kept reptiles in the past. I believe he's been involved, and I could be wrong, but I believe he's been involved in like turtle conservation and stuff like that. And if you watch the trailer, he really highlights a lot of people talking about smuggling turtles in that.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he's kind of just upset about people smuggling turtles. And so he's trying to just kind of call that out. But if I could get this to accomplish any one thing to where I would be happy, it would be to get people talking and having productive conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Even if this show only highlights the negative, but it's not like directly out to get herpetoculture, if that gets people to take a step back and kind of hold a mirror up to themselves and be like, okay, am I doing what's best for my animals? Am I giving them proper care? And if that causes a positive reaction, I'm fine with it. I have
Mm-hmm.
no problem because I think we can't just like and we're going to talk about this later, so I don't want to get into it, but we can't just pretend it doesn't exist.
Mhm.
It's going to happen, and I don't think ignoring this show coming out is going to look good. And I want to offer a brief analogy and just get your opinion on this analogy, and just
Mhm.
kind of see how it feels. If I approached you, or if someone approached me, you're just a third party observer, we'll say like that, and this person accused me of doing wrong, and my reaction was, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. Hey, me? Yeah, no, I've never done anything wrong before. Like, yeah, no, you're crazy, dude. That wasn't me. If that was my first reaction, just keep that in mind. But if they approached me and accused me of the same thing, and my reaction was, "You're right. I've made mistakes in my past. I've tried to learn from those things. I've tried to be a better person since then, and I own those. I don't hide from them. I'm very open and honest about those things. And here's the steps that I've made to be a better person since then, and how I've tried to make up for those things. And here's where we're looking to move forward. Who are you going to trust the most of those two scenarios?"
The second.
Yeah, the second
Yeah.
person. So if this documentary comes out and lawmakers see the reptile community completely blacklisted, not talk about it, not acknowledge it exists, and just pretend none of these illegal things ever happen, I don't think that's a good look.
Oh
I think
no.
it's a better look to own it and to be like, yeah, these things
Mhm.
sucked. Here's what we're doing now. So
Yeah.
that's my initial feelings and kind of where my gut leans me at the moment. But I think we need to get into the actual meat and potatoes, or just of what this documentary, some of the different things we want to talk about with the documentary. So, um, what we really want to highlight is some of the validity that will be brought up in this, and just kind of talk about some of the things we can gather from the writing about the documentary that's already out, and some of the like stuff that's shown in the trailer. So, one thing that is important in herpetoculture history is the demand for these animals is huge, and this is why reptile smuggling became so big. Is in the 1920s specifically, when herpetoculture was really on a rise, demand was massive. Now there was no laws then, or not very many laws, at least not, not to say it was totally wild west, but it was significantly less laws than we have now. So demand was humongous for these animals. And then when you get to like the timeline that this documentary takes place in the 70s, the demand was just as big. The animals were better known about, and there were people who, like, your Tom Crutchfield, who was alive during that time, and his mentors, the people that he saw that were doing the cool things that he liked, they started their work during the time of less laws. So what they were doing may not have been illegal. So when he tries to replicate what they were doing, he's doing it in a legal manner. Not to excuse it, but that's just the demand for these reptiles was absolutely massive. So, do you have anything to add, Luke?
Nope. I think you covered it there.
Okay. So I think it's just one of those things. The demand being huge is a big part of it, but what you can't have is the obsession becoming the justification for it.
Mhm.
So you've got the demand is one piece of it, but I don't know. Why don't you talk about the obsession part of it a little bit? Because I don't want to just totally dominate this section. But
So, kind of what you're leading into, or you said it bar for bar there, obsession becoming justification, is that as long as there's a high enough want, a high enough need for something,
mhm,
people are going to do it. Maybe
yeah,
it's something very small and silly, like going 5 miles over the speed limit. Okay. It's illegal. People do it all the time. Okay.
yeah,
Maybe it's something a bit crazier, like shoplifting, burglary, something like that. And it's because they want something that badly, or maybe they need something that badly, right? And so it becomes justified to them that they need to do it.
mhm,
Yeah, I feel like you could take that and apply it to any tangible item, or in this case, animal. Maybe somebody really doesn't like gaboon vipers, but they really, really like rhino vipers. So they don't like gaboon vipers enough to smuggle those into the country, but
yeah,
they've got to have these rhino vipers. They're, especially back then when this documentary was made, back when a lot of these stories are taking place, it was a lot more accessible to do a lot of these things.
yeah,
So there wasn't a whole lot stopping you, even if you weren't supposed to do it.
yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I think you kind of summed it up with the obsession becoming the justification there.
Yeah, so it definitely is. It's the idea of like, I want this thing bad enough that it makes it okay for me to do it. I mean, think like drugs,
Yeah,
the drug trade and
absolutely.
all that stuff is the justification for these people risking and becoming smugglers of
Mhm.
drugs is they're going to make a killing, and so their obsession, people's obsession with the drug trade and with the fix that they get from those highs, that becomes the
Mhm.
justification for trying to smuggle those things in. So
Oh, yeah, I mean, to put it in the king's English there, some might say that they coveted it.
yeah, exactly.
So
But the other thing is the the obsession was particularly with rare reptiles in general. Like
oh, yeah.
the common animals back then, people were obsessed during those time periods with
Mhm.
like pet alligators, things like that, pet sliders, turtles, and stuff. But ultimately, the largest obsession was with the rare reptiles. And rare reptiles were rare for a reason. They still are rare for a reason,
Mhm.
and it's because they're incredibly difficult to obtain, especially incredibly difficult to obtain legally. I mean, you think of like the Fiji banded iguana, which will be
Yeah,
probably a hot topic of this documentary. If you could get Fiji banded iguanas legally in the United States, you would probably quickly become one of the wealthiest men in herpetoculture. And I'd be
absolutely.
lying if I said I haven't spent a lot of time trying to figure out a legal way to get Fiji banded iguanas in the United States. But the thing is, legally, there's almost no way to get them here. So
Mhm.
people might have that same passion and drive that I have to where like I want those animals to be able to be possible to have, and they might be willing to go to extents that I'm just not willing to go to. And so that is another side of that same situation. And the thing is, like, you get kind of the two opposite sides of the coin. Where to me, I'm recognizing that they're an animal and they're not an object. They're not just something you can collect, like a toy that sits on your shelf or anything like that. So you have
Mhm.
to go through things through these extra channels. But to everybody, that's not the case. That not everybody treats them the exact same way.
No, absolutely not. Um, I think you kind of summed it up there, treating them like collectibles, something to sit on the shelf. Something I feel like when you treat them as collectibles, it almost
Oh,
becomes an ego or a pride thing at that point. It's not just, oh, I want to look at them. It's, I want to tell everybody I have everything in the genus Pantherophis that lives in my state, or I've collected all the corn snake morphs that are available at this time. I don't know why I'm hitting rat snakes so hard right now, but it almost becomes like a status symbol when you look at them as collectibles there. And speaking of collectibles and rare reptiles, we have it here on our show sheet. Money amplifies everything. Money
yeah.
gets talking, money gets people moving. So, like you were talking about with our some of your more common reptiles back at the time. Correct me if I'm wrong. I've not done a lot of research on this topic, but it used to not be very difficult or very expensive to get alligators or red-eared sliders into your house.
Oh no, I mean it was
No,
super easy. They
no,
used to be available for sale on the back of comic books.
yeah.
So it used to be. I mean, like sure, it was a different price, inflation and all that fun stuff.
Mhm.
But it used to be like you would send a letter and you would request an alligator, and if that alligator showed up at your doorstep alive, you would send with the postal service $1, and you'd have a pet alligator, and that was it.
Yeah.
That was the process. That was on the back of your Marvel and DC comic books as a kid. Is just how to get these alligators, and the care was atrocious as far as what it recommended on there. But I mean, that's a part of it.
Which is pretty insane. And we still hear stories about this today that have circulated from these events, like alligators in the sewers of New York and
Mhm.
whatnot, from people flushing their baby gators down the toilets and them surviving in the sewers. Now, take that little, very affordable alligator and make it a very expensive, very rare, highly sought after Komodo dragon or
Mhm.
saltwater crocodile. And all of a sudden, there's a lot of heads turning, there's a lot of people talking about it.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, I feel like everything these days has a monetary or money trail. I say these days for as long as we've known.
yeah,
Everything has a monetary or money trail following it, whether they're alive or Funko Pops or whatever it is that you like to
yeah.
collect.
It's ultimately like the eclectic behavior of human nature is just to like almost be like the mythical dragon and just hoard what's shiny.
Mhm.
Not obviously not everybody falls within that bubble, but it's a pretty common thing. And what's really interesting is the we highlighted the collectors, but zoos and dealers also created a lot of this demand for that.
Oh
And
yeah.
so when you take a look at like the 1920s and like going back to that, but the 1920s on is really when things kind of picked up. And you just see like these zoos that are popping up, and they're trying to fill out their reptile houses, and they're looking for rare animals and all that. A lot of these zoos participated in things that were illegal, and a lot of them knowingly participated in it. And so it's one of those things where there's this fine line of they're trying to turn a blind eye to make sure they can fill out their reptile houses and things like that, because they're trying to do that for the sake of conservation, and maybe they're not breaking the law because they're not illegally sourcing the animal, but the person who they bought it from did illegally source that animal. And
Mhm.
that is something that was pretty common during those times when a lot of these zoos were founded, where they were getting all these wild caught animals in from questionable origin. And so that's where a lot of this demand came from. And then when little Timmy went to the zoo during summer break and saw those cool animals there, and he grew up to become, a reptile lover himself, he didn't just want whatever was available at the pet store. He wanted what he grew up and what he liked. And, if the dealers put rare and important and all this stuff on their listings and everything, that became the craze and what people sought after, and it developed a fever. It developed that desire and that need to have those things that we don't have any right to own. Like it's a privilege to be able to work with reptiles in any facet, but I think people have developed this idea of like we have a right to own these animals, and that's really what a lot of this documentary focuses on, is the psychology of just the fever around collecting these rare animals, and it goes so far as to like totally go beyond the moral guidelines, and that's where you get the events that take place in the show, is you get that sort of situation. And so my question to you, Luke, is if I was going to paint you in the shoes of like somebody in this show, like what what would it be that would make you be willing to risk prison? Like if you were one of them, like how would you have to get yourself in the mindset to where risking jail time, and why would it be worth it to break these laws?
I feel like there are three things that kind of motivate people to do some of the things they do, right? One has got to be where I feel like a lot of it, I feel like it's going to start off different for different people, right?
Mm,
But where I feel like a lot of these starts off is same thing that got you and me into the reptiles that we have. They have a passion for this, right?
yeah,
I think a lot of these people who are doing this, they do have a genuine love for these animals. Just their love looks a little bit different. Their
yeah,
passion looks a little bit different for us, right? So they get into this passion. Who, I was going to ask something kind of silly there, but it's their, I feel like it's usually a passion that gets them into it, and the passion leads to this, or perhaps this other subject could lead to a passion, which is that monetary value.
yeah,
Maybe it's a quick and easy way to make money for them, flipping cobras out of their garage, importing
yeah,
several of them into Africa, maybe 50 of them, maybe 10 of them live, and then we sell the 10 of them, each one for more than we sold the 54 to begin with,
yeah,
which I mean, you know, is not, when we're talking about assets, liabilities, monetary things, right? It's not a bad business scheme if you're flipping a good enough profit. But when we're talking about breaking laws and, abusing animals and going to prison, that becomes a whole nother topic there. And that kind of brings into the third, I say it doesn't bring into, the third one's kind of unrelated to the other two, but it's just the thrill of it. Some
yeah,
people are, especially, you know, people who like holding venomous snakes, also really like adrenaline.
yeah,
So, I mean, maybe you could get adrenaline from holding venomous snakes. Maybe you could get adrenaline from going really fast over the speed limit. Maybe you could get adrenaline from doing anything that could get you caught and thrown in prison.
hmm
And it's chasing that passion, that money, that adrenaline, and you get a very crazy cocktail going on there with all
yeah.
three of those things being sought after.
And I think you kind of made some good points. One other thing I think is important is also the pride aspect of it.
Yeah.
Like, I've mentioned before that one of my goals is I do want to be known for doing something impactful in the hobby. And I have to be careful of not trying to become prideful to the point of like, I need people to know who I am, and like,
Mhm.
and not seeking that external validation. But like when you see a lot of these people and kind of where they originated from, they originate from pretty humble beginnings. Like Tom Crutchfield was just a carpet salesman before becoming a reptile person, and then he caught the fever and kind of chased after it. So I think you see like the pride aspect of like, I need to be the best, I've got to be the greatest. So when you've got the pride, you've got the passion, you've got the lucrative amounts of money that can come with, taking that gamble and risking potential jail time. Like you said, it does create that cocktail that just it's the perfect thing that lures people in to being willing to break the laws. But the thing is, like, collectors don't ever stop, and that's the thing, is like the people who are breaking these laws, it snowballs, and that's what ultimately results in all these people getting caught eventually. Is they never just make enough money and then start doing things the right way, or at least very rarely. Not going to say nobody's ever done that, but these people, they it's like how people say you build a tolerance to drugs. You do enough drugs, and eventually you have to take more and more and more and more and more, and eventually people end up overdosing on them.
Mhm.
Same thing with this, is people are always chasing after something rare. They're chasing after the next hard thing to get, because if you had the ability to start importing Fiji iguanas, eventually people are going to want something cooler than a Fiji iguana. I don't know of anything necessarily that exists like that, but if tuatars, if you're able to start dealing in tuatars, all of a sudden start smuggling those, then that's going to be the hot ticket item. You're going to be known as
Yeah,
the Tuatara
absolutely.
guy, no longer that. So it's always having to chase something rarer that ends up getting these people caught. And why we end up having documentaries like this come out is because people, they can't stop themselves. It's an addiction, and that fever just continues to grow until you're legitimately sick, and you only have the desire to just continually poach and steal the next rarest animal. But um, one thing that is important to highlight is because you mentioned the passion and all that, and how
Mhm.
me and you are both passionate people. To you, is there a line you can think of when passion becomes obsession?
Yeah, for sure. I try to keep a good kind of home work balance, even
Yeah,
though I work with animals at work and then come home and work with more animals. So I'm a bit of a hypocrite in that way. But I feel very easy to get burned out
yeah,
if, say, for this topic in our podcast, if reptiles, sure, that can be the main thing that you're into. But if that's the only thing that you're into, it gets tough. And so
yeah.
that's why I think it's very important to have other outlets, other hobbies as well. But if you're just like you said, obsessed there, and you're just, oh, all I can think about are reptiles, all I want to do is reptiles, you're gonna have a hard time there.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, like the line that you see these people falling into is almost the antithesis of burnout. Is it becomes an unlimited and relentless fuel of their passion goes from being a hobby to it's something they crave, and they can't get enough of it. And I think of this a lot in sports, but sports, it doesn't quite end up the same way. Of
Mhm.
just like you talk about these people who are 24/7, they're invested in like the news boards of their favorite team, they're always looking up things about it, and they become legitimately obsessed. I think for me, I'm a huge football fan. When I'm watching the Georgia Bulldogs play on Saturday, if they're losing in the fourth quarter, I feel physically sick watching that. And that is, an obsession to the point where it's unhealthy for me physically. And it's probably taken years off my life, the stress of watching a team who loves to play on the edge anyways. But that's where you see a lot of that line of the passion becoming the obsession. But an important thing is, I mean, can obsession exist without criminal behavior? I mean, my gut says yes.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
think I
Yeah.
think obsession can exist in that, especially with reptiles. Because I mean, think about how many people's lives are almost 100% reptiles, and they're not doing things that are criminal.
Mhm.
But I do think it is important to manage your mindset. Talk about holding your mind captive and just kind of like being in control of everything you've got going on in your life, and making sure you don't become addicted, because I think that's where the problem lies. Is it becomes an addiction for some people, and they're always going to be chasing it, and there's never going to be enough, and
Yeah.
eventually you're going to do something illegal.
It's
Is
like
that kind
where
of how you
that
feel? Similar?
I was gonna say, yeah, it's almost like whereas that burnout becomes more of like a withdrawal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. No, I totally agree with that. So, um, one thing,
But yeah,
just
to kind of
yeah,
answer circle back to that question there so we don't brush over it too quickly of can obsession exist without criminal behavior? Absolutely, it can. Obsession can look
Mhm.
at things like watching your favorite show on your favorite streaming service,
Yeah.
playing your favorite video game. You can get sucked into a video game for a while, and
Mhm.
you can just sit on your couch and do no criminal activities at all. But look at how easy it is for certain people to get addicted to a video game, even.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
it just kind of
absolutely.
takes over your life.
Hmm.
And so I think that's the thing with herps in general is it's so easy to snowball into it. I mean, how often have you seen people talk about how once you get your first pet reptile, it's going to be a snowball effect your entire life? And for some people, it ends up being a financial issue. Like
Hmm.
they have difficulty sustaining themselves financially because they can't stop spending money on stuff like that. And so even if it's not just a criminal thing, like for some people, getting too addicted to the hobby can cause us problems, but also people who go about things the right way have figured out a lot of important things for reptile care. They've created giant businesses that help a lot of people. So
Hmm.
it's I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with the obsession of reptiles, but you have to be careful and you have to make sure that you're managing things properly and making sure that you're not going to question your morals aren't going to come into question just because your obsession has gone so far. But the thing is, like, the show is entirely about people whose obsession has gone too far and people
Yeah.
who have dove off the deep end and they've kind of lost themselves in that. And it seems like the number one person that the show is focusing on specifically is Tom Crutchfield. We've already mentioned him a little bit and just kind of his origin and everything, but the question isn't necessarily his origin because that's already been written. What's more in question is the future and kind of how should we remember someone like Tom, because he's not only done bad, he's done a lot of good things as well. So like I want to get your opinion. You know, how do you think he should be viewed?
I don't think there's a right way to answer that. I can say how
Yeah.
I think he should be viewed. I can say how you think he should be viewed. But similar to, not to drag politics into it, but politicians, I don't think you can look at many politicians that have done all good or all bad. You can kind of pick and choose which ones you like better and which ones you're going to be fans of, follow, vote for, things
Yeah.
like that. So it really kind of comes down into your values. If you're somebody who values conservation, look into what Tom Crutchfield has accomplished, has hurt or harmed, because he, to my understanding, he has done both
Yeah.
into conservation. If you're somebody who really values herpetoculture, look and see what impacts he's had on herpetoculture, right?
Hmm.
If you're somebody who really values training, I remember as a kid watching Camp Kenan on YouTube and learning a lot about handling monitors and other large lizards from watching Camp Kenan over there interview Tom Crutchfield. And
Hmm.
he had some really, at least at the time, extremely innovative ideas for that. He really kind of was a founding father for a lot of the things that we do, even though he has a sketchy past.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's a correct way or incorrect way to view somebody like that. You've got to form your own opinion of them instead of saying this is how everybody should view them.
Yeah. And I think that's true because there are so many different views of like how you should look at someone like that. And I think there genuinely is this aspect of you can appreciate the good things that he accomplished and you can still condemn the bad things that he did and not say that you're writing him off totally as a human being. And so it does leave you in that kind of purgatory gray area with him of like it just doesn't seem like there's really a way to decide, and maybe the future will answer that question for us, but as of right now I do think it is hard to answer that. So I mean, you take a look at who Tom Crutchfield was and who he is today. um, he was a major pioneer for husbandry and breeding. I mean, think about how many animals we would not have in captivity and how many animals he brought in legally. Like he, as much as he did illegal things, there's a lot of animals he imported and brought in legally. And he maybe, the care may have been questionable at the time as far as like the standard today, but it was a different time. He did, I'm sure, what he thought was right in some circumstances then. But he really did pioneer a lot of modern day husbandry and at least pave the way for things like that. But you also have criminal convictions that come along with it. And while he did do a lot of things legally, he sure enough did stuff Fiji iguanas up his shorts and brag about it. Like, that is that is another thing he did, and that's something you can't just ignore. You can't
Mhm.
just look at the positive side. You have to take that into it. But then as time's gone on, he's tried to do conservation work, and he's tried to, advocate for animals and conservation, things like that, and try to do good work then. And I know some people have pointed this out. This is a point of contention for us, but because neither one of us are really college guys, we're just kind of experienced people. He followed a similar path. So some people have made the argument that he's just a common folk reptile enjoyer and things like that, who just his arrogance or his pride led him to where he is today. But I mean, good for him. If as far as the legal aspect of it, if he didn't have to pay for college loans and just figure things out, I don't think a lack of college education or formal education should be a knock against him. So when you look at if Tom is redeemable, it is really complex, and it's not something that's an easy yes or no answer, and it's something that you kind of have to like wrestle with it. And I think as time goes on, maybe this documentary will provide some clarity. Maybe he'll seem redeemable in it, maybe he won't. Maybe he'll write the story for himself, throughout the remainder of his life. And I hope that, my biggest hope is, no matter what he's done, that he does continue to strive for redemption and doing what is best for these animals,
Mhm.
and just kind of going on through that. But
I
Tom,
mean, that's all
oops,
each of us can do, right? Is to write our own stories
yeah,
and do the best that we can. I guess kind of harking back on some similar stories and how it's very easy to judge someone based on our own knowledge, no matter how little or much of it we have, is kind
hmm,
of a funny story of us back at the pet store. When we got in, and you'll know exactly where this is going as soon as I say it, when we ordered some Central American banded geckos.
hmm, yeah,
And we printed out their little care sheet that went on the tag there, but we did not have access to a picture, or if I'm misremembering it, but we didn't have access to a picture of a Central American banded gecko, did
yeah.
we?
We
Just
didn't have
the
access
hair.
to it, so we ended up using an
So
African fat tail gecko picture.
yeah, because we had to have a picture.
Hmm.
And I believe African fat tail geckos were what we had previously when they
Yes.
sold out. Yeah, so we just taped over the temperature and humidity requirements, all that, and tank size and diet, and just left the picture on there. And I'm sure, very well intending woman came up and expressed a lot of concern that our geckos were malnourished. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the pictures on site, but if anybody
Yeah.
is able to look up or just knows off the top of their head what the difference between an African fat tail gecko and a Central American banded gecko look like,
Yeah.
sure, color and pattern, they're going to look very similar. But that that thickness, that size of
Yeah.
a healthy banded gecko and a healthy fat tail gecko, it's kind of implied in the name, is going to be dramatically different.
Yeah.
And there was a woman who came in extremely concerned that we had a malnourished gecko, that we were not taking adequate care of it. And the thing that was still comical to me is she demanded that we needed to hand her over the gecko
Hmm.
so that she could rescue it.
Yes.
Um, which was still kind of blown my mind to this day of,
Hmm.
no, you just want this free gecko is what
Yeah.
is what I was thinking at the time. But no, we kind of both tried to politely explain to her, like, oh no, this is a picture of a fat tail gecko. We don't have access to a picture of a banded gecko yet. We're working on it. This is actually a good body score for them. And
Hmm.
she was not buying it. And the thing that I think kind of almost made me chuckle in the conversation was, it is abuse to have this on Eco Earth. It
Yeah.
needs to be on Repticarpet.
Yeah. And it
So I mean, like, just using her as an example to kind of put us under the same magnifying glass there, it's very easy to take your knowledge, again, no matter how limited or expansive it is, and apply it to someone else without knowing their life story, without knowing what they're going through at the time, without knowing that could have been that person's 100% at the time. They could have been doing the best that they could have for that animal. And because you didn't agree with it, you're going to come and make a big fuss about it.
yeah.
But yeah.
I do think that's an important thing that you mentioned too, is like, perspective is everything. And a lot of
Mhm.
times people get on this high horse of like, my opinion is the only opinion that matters, and I'm totally correct. Like, oh, if you don't have your pet corn steak in a 6 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot, fully bioactive, with all this climbing space and all that, then you're being abusive to that animal. And like, I can see the argument you're making because of how much they move around in their natural
Mhm.
history, and all that stuff. But like, the perspective your individual perspective isn't everything, and so it's a similar application can be applied to like the Tom Crutchfield situation of like a lot of times the people who are going to be the loudest and they're going to take a definite stance of yes he's fully redeemable or no he's totally unredeemable. They're going to be kind of doing it from a lack of full blown perspective onto his whole situation. So uh, yeah, I see. But I would basically I would encourage that you avoid trying to answer that for him,
Mhm.
for anyone who's watching this, and just kind of like absorb it as information and as history, and then wait to form your opinions. Do more research. Don't let this be your only impersonation, because odds are this may paint him in a worse light than is true. So keep those things in mind. But ultimately, that situation is more of a situation of something that took place in the past. Tom, while he is still alive and he is still a relevant figure in herpetoculture, he's nowhere near the pinnacle and the center focus of herpetoculture, specifically in what has morphed into today, which is a lot more of like a social media influencer style. Those tend to be the people who get the most attention. And ultimately, the people who get the most attention now are the people who do crazy stuff online. And this documentary highlights somebody who is very popular today, and also very unpopular today, and that is Tyler Nolan. It points him out on there. And so, my question to you, Luke, and just want to see if you have an idea is why do you think the filmmakers would include a modern influencer in something that is predominantly about the past and the history of illegal importation?
Well, it's an interesting question. Um, I feel like kind of the best answer to that is that it's not just about the past, right? That
Yeah.
a good section of this is going to be about, and where kind of my fears and apprehensions of this documentary come from is that, yeah, maybe a significant portion of this documentary will be about the past and the origins, but there will
Mhm.
also be a good chunk that it's about today.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm a little nervous for. And like you said, Tyler there, he is very, very successful on YouTube and what he does. Um, for what it's worth, I think he takes wonderful care of his animals there. And so hopefully some things like that will be brought to a very positive light through this documentary. But he's very, I think you said it already, that he's a very relevant person. So
Mhm.
why wouldn't you want him on this documentary just
Yeah.
from a content standpoint? If he's very successful on YouTube, if lots of people hearing about this documentary even hear that he's in it, they're going to go watch it. I'm sure I'm not a follower on there, but I'm sure he probably, if I was in his shoes in the documentary, I would be talking about it on my successful YouTube channel if I had one.
Mhm.
And so then everybody on the YouTube channel who's watching this is going to say, I've got to go see this. And so, I
Yeah.
mean, just from a content point, why would you not want to include somebody like that?
Yeah, I can see the point you're trying to make, and I hadn't even thought about it like that sense. One point that I think I'm interested in, and this is kind of one of my fears for it, is if they're I guess I shouldn't say fear. That's not the right word because I do think it actually needs to be highlighted. So maybe more something I'm excited for is if they're highlighting something that is modern and somebody who is doing things in a modern way, like Tyler Nolan, there's a good chance they're also going to highlight modern crime. And that it's not just going to be a thing about the past. Because one thing is, if you listen to Cluebird and Cluebird Radio, or if you don't listen to them, you should. But if you do listen to them, in their episode last week, Zach mentioned that in the 2 weeks in between their episodes, he had been notified of 1,200 box turtles that have been stopped from illegal exportation from the United States to overseas. That's 1,200 wild caught box turtles that were intercepted. That's how many were caught of one species. And that's how many, like, this stuff is still going on. And so I hope Tyler has nothing to do with that. I hope he's not participating in those things. But I think, like you said, a lot of the reason why he's included is because he's a polarizing individual. He doesn't necessarily conform to societal norms. Well, I don't have anything against tattoos. A lot of people do, and a lot of people see that as like a crazy thing. So him having a lot of tattoos can be polarizing. It may make him seem like a crazy person, to some people's eyes and stuff like that. But um, Another thing I do want to be very clear about is, while I don't know Tyler personally, I do greatly oppose a lot of the content he puts out when it comes to the free handling and the lack of
Hmm.
safety and things like that. Like, I don't think that's smart. I don't think that's a good look for the community at all. And I don't think he should be doing those things. And so if he's getting called out for some of that irresponsible behavior in there, good. But I do think having him in there is probably, like you mentioned, a large part of just his fame and the attention that it will draw. And that is just kind of a part of the modern reptile celebrity culture. You look at a lot of people who are big names in the hobby, and a lot of them are doing things that are questionable, and it's because that's what gets attention. It's not necessarily safely standing 5 feet away from the rattlesnake and talking about it in a calm and educational manner that's going to draw in millions of views. It's the jumping around loud, obnoxious, and free handling and the near miss and all that stuff. That's what's going to get attention. So, and I think that does change public perception of what the reptile hobby is. So, Luke, if you were getting into herpetoculture, and I've been throwing a lot of tough questions at you, and I kind of like just kind of throwing these things at you and seeing how you do with it. If you were just getting into herpetoculture and your only influence was people like Chandler's Wildlife, Tyler Nolan, Johnny Venom, Fang Peep, those types of people, what would your impression of captive herpetoculture be?
I think I would start getting sucked in very quickly, just like this is awesome,
Yeah.
and then because I mean, this is kind of this is almost kind of what happened to me, right? I used to watch. I'm glad you mentioned Chandler's Wildlife there. I used to watch him at least once a week
Mhm.
and caught up on videos. I remember subscribing to his YouTube channel at the beginning and thinking, this is awesome. This guy's like the next Steve Irwin. He's doing a really great job. And in fairness, I do think he does a very good job educating people about reptiles, getting people passionate about
Yeah.
reptiles. But unfortunately, he takes a lot of risks in doing so.
Yeah.
And sure, risk versus reward, is a question there. But it kind of became a very prominent question, especially for me watching this, of like, what am I watching? What am I
Yeah.
supporting here? When he got bit by the wild cobra he was
Mhm.
doing an episode on, right?
Yeah.
And I gained so much respect for him when he said, you know what? That was a big mistake I made. That was filmed and posted. I'm done with free handling,
Yeah.
at least to an extent, right?
Mhm.
I think he had made a couple caveats with like his king cobras that he's well known for, saying that you can actually damage the ribs of large snakes like that using a snake hook on them. So,
Yeah.
to an extent, going to try and at least make an effort to handle snakes much more safely. And there was an episode he put out where he kind of touched on that a little bit more about handling the snakes in a way that's safe for them as well, which is, of course, very important. But he very quickly regressed back into a lot of his old habits. And I was like, well, you didn't learn anything from this.
Mhm.
And I know there's always that promotion at whenever, whether it's Chandler's Wildlife, whether it's Tyler Nolan's, whether it's some random guy who found a rattlesnake crossing the road.
Mhm.
There's always this well-intending disclaimer: don't do what I do. I know these
But
snakes
look how
very well,
cool
but look how cool I am. And there's definitely a silver lining to the look how cool, because
Mhm.
again, it's very entertaining. It gets people to see snakes in a different light. If somebody can go pick up a king
Mhm.
cobra and hold it in their hands and it just sits there, maybe they had a previous view of that animal that they're just, I feel like especially here in South Georgia, you hear it with the water moccasins, the
Yeah.
cottonmouths. They're out to get you. They're out to chase you down. And then you see this guy on YouTube just pick one up with his hand. That can very quickly change a person's perception of it.
Yeah.
That said, I'm personally of the opinion that there are easier and safer ways to do that.
Yeah.
It's not to say that my opinion's right. I'm just
Mhm.
saying that I do not condone those kind of
Yeah.
activities.
So, and I am going to take a little bit of a harsher stance on this,
Mhm.
and I definitely see where you're coming from. My opinion on this is it's stupid and
Mhm.
unexcusable doing that, and there's just no room for that type of behavior in herpetoculture, at least in the main setting. And the reason why is because those being the most popular influencers doing these things that are dangerous, that's what people who are not involved in reptiles are the most likely to see. They're not
Mhm.
super likely to see that small page who's educational and respectful to their animals. They're way more likely to see that person get bit by that Indian cobra, almost get bit by that. I think it's a Gambino viper that Tyler
Yeah,
Nolan
let
almost
me
get bit by the other day. Like
if I
that's
can
just
jump in
blowing
right
up.
there,
Yeah.
just to kind of put a polarizing light, how big do you think the follower difference is there between, say, Tyler Nolan and Colubrid and Colubroid Radio?
Oh gosh. I mean, it's going to be probably several 100,000 follower difference.
Several hundred thousand, but CCR is someone that I think does a wonderful job
Mm-hmm.
of
And
what
deserve
these
way more
guys are.
recognition.
Exactly. So I mean, there is definitely that what's it sensationalist aspect to it.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah, I absolutely agree with everything that you're saying there. And sorry to kind of jump in the middle there, but like while you were saying that just kind of clicked for me of like, yeah, look at there is kind of a
Yeah.
polarizing standard we can look at here. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. But I think that's one of those things of like, if I was just getting into the hobby, my impression would be what the standard acceptable practice is doing dangerous things and doing things that are questionable. And that would kind of make me almost more likely to either follow along with that trend or totally avoid the hobby in general if I don't feel
Mhm.
comfortable with those things. And I think just having that be the number one highlighted thing is very questionable in my eyes. But thankfully, it's not only people like that who are the popular people. You also have people like Snake Discovery,
Yeah.
Emily and her husband there, who are awesome people. You have people like Clint's Reptiles, who do some really cool things. And they may be friends with some of those people, they may be adjacent to them, but you're not really seeing them do those same things. They are a lot more calm, slow paced, educational. And so those are people that I think definitely deserve recognition and lots of support. But the thing is, sensationalism sells, and it always has sold. I mean, you look at superhero movies, monster movies, all those things, like
Just
sensationalizing anything
look at the
sells.
as seen on TV commercials.
Yeah, you
Like,
have to make everything
don't get me
crazy.
started on the Fushigi.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah, Fushigi, the bright lights, the in your face, just whoa, look at all this stuff going on, the loud noises. It's all about grabbing your attention. So like if I'm just sitting here the whole show and we're talking super monotone like this, you're gonna lose focus. But if I all of a sudden explode and I'm super charismatic in the camera, you may not enjoy it, but you're gonna look. And the
Oh yeah.
thing is, just looks sell nowadays, especially in the age of short form content. It's you don't need to get somebody for 20 minutes. You don't need to build a continual follower base where they're following you because of the actual value you bring. You need somebody for 10 seconds. You need to be able to get their attention for 10 seconds and get them to just be like, oh, that was neat, like, or cool. Or you get somebody talking and arguing in the comments. Like it's all about interaction in the short form nowadays. And that's where the money is. And so that is so much easier to do with sensationalism. But when you look at the start of herpetoculture, it may have been less sensational than today, but it was still greatly sensationalized. I mean, like you look back at things like snake eaters, which I'm not going to get into in too many details because I'd love to cover it one day later on. But like these are people who would legitimately eat snakes on stage, and that was a part of early reptiles being brought in the United States. That was a long time ago. People would eat snakes on stage. Early reptile shows were super sensationalized and just like blown out of proportion, like all this stuff going on. It was really sensationalized. And you look at reptiles and TV shows, I think in particular, and movies just blow these animals out of proportion to make them seem like crazy stuff. And Luke, you brought this up in the pre-show, and I wanted to kind of get your opinion on it. There is a very popular TV show that me and you both actually really liked, but it is definitely a sensationalist TV show. And do you want to talk about that a little bit?
That's got to be the Crocodile Hunter.
Oh yeah,
It's either that or Jesse. One of the two.
yeah, either one, either one.
No, the Crocodile Hunter. And that's where I feel like you get the origin for not only a lot of the good, many, many, many of the good things in herpetoculture and of conservation and the amount of kids that are adults these days that grew up watching this and it really kind of honed that passion for these animals. But you also get a negative side to it. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of the main, I don't know if that was the point of today's episode, but I think it's kind of become the point of today's
Yeah.
episode are the gray areas of herpetoculture here, right? No matter how small
Mm-hmm.
or large they can be, you get people trying to do what Steve Irwin did. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. Loved the show.
Oh yeah.
Still love the show. Love what his family is doing over in Australia,
Hmm.
the Irwins, through the zoo and everything, the content that they're putting out there, and just the unspeakable amount of work that's been done for
Yeah.
conservation alone, much less in instilling passions in people, if we don't
Hmm.
even mention that. An insane amount. But then you get people who say, that's awesome. And you get that passion, and they get so passionate that they're going to replicate it. I mean, I think they say, how's the saying go? Imitation is the highest form of flattery.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you've got people grabbing venomous snakes off the side of the road.
Hmm.
In my own opinion of it, as much as I enjoy watching that content, I cannot say that I condone Steve Irwin grabbing venomous snakes
Yeah.
the ways he did. I think the biggest wake up call to me with that was after I started working with venomous snakes, and I was like, I don't even remember. There was I remember scrolling on YouTube, and there was a full episode of The Crocodile Hunter highlighting timber rattlesnakes,
Hmm.
and I was like, or at least a full section of an episode there. I was like, this is awesome. I gotta watch it. My jaw hit the floor. I don't know if these snakes were wild. I don't know if they were placed. I don't think it really matters.
Yeah.
You would just pick them up by the tail and move them. And at one point, almost sat on top of one.
Yeah. It just like yeah, and I think
And I mean,
I
and
have
the
a
thing
similar
is,
feeling.
yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
no, that's it. Yeah.
Okay. I think I have a very similar feeling for the show of like I greatly appreciate what it did. And I do think for the
Mhm.
most part, 99% of the time, he was a sensationalist who did it the right way. And
Yeah.
like he was largely respectful of the animals. Now, a lot of those animals, I think we know today, were placed in those spots or they were found ahead of time, and a lot of
Mhm.
those things were rehearsed and scripted and things like that, which I think does change things a little bit. But it is a show that I think is a net positive, and I think it is
Mhm.
dramatically more of a net positive as a net negative. But what happens now
Absolutely.
is the
Yeah.
bad imitators. You know,
Hmm.
you get people who are trying to be the next Steve Irwin, and I don't think there's room for trying to be the next anything. Is you have to be the best version of yourself and do what's true to you and what you find passionate. Because if you don't, you're going to end up being just a bad actor, and you're going to end up being somebody who's trying to replicate someone else's work, and you're not going to do it right, and it's just not going to work. Um, and so you look at the people who are trying to replicate those things today,
Hmm.
and they're doing some questionable stuff. They're not treating animals with respect. I don't know the dude's name, but that dude who dives like right in front of snakes on the ground and stuff like
It's
that,
become a trend. There's so many people who do that
I
now.
can't stand that
No.
crap. That ticks me off. Every time I see it, dislike, don't want to see it,
Hmm.
like can't stand it. And there's that dude, I think it's David Oren. I don't mind saying his name because it makes me so mad. But those people, there's no room for the crap that they're doing. And I get it. They like reptiles, and I get it. They want to advertise and they want to show off all these cool things about the animals, but they're not doing it the right way. Flat out, full stop, doing it wrong. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. You can have the same message that they're trying to put out without all that flashy crap there, especially now that they've built this big platform. They could absolutely ride that momentum and still get a good message out in from doing all that stuff. Like the videos of them letting iguanas bite them on the
Yeah.
arms and stuff like that. There's no room for that. There will
Absolutely.
never be room for that. And
No.
it's horrifically irresponsible.
No, and I really like what you said that they definitely could turn this around into a good thing. I think a
Mhm.
big one that a lot of people who are into herpetoculture today are going to be familiar with are Snake Bites TV.
Yeah.
Look how big of a 180 they did with Brian
Yep.
Barczyk and everything that he accomplished there.
Hmm.
What I mean, you go back and watch a video from gosh, almost 20 years ago now, if they're even still up, and go watch
Hmm.
one of, you know, one of their more recent or even some of his, mid 2010 videos, it's night and day.
Yeah.
Night and day. And
Yep.
it's I
And
don't
I
want to
think
say
that
I don't want to say that it's that easy, but it's definitely a decision to make there.
I just
Oh.
I feel like it's you can change. You can
Mhm.
grow out of those things, and there's no excuse, especially because it's not like they don't get feedback. People push back against that content like crazy, and they dig their heels on. And so, I don't
Mhm.
want to get too bogged down in that, but I think we both agree like sensationalism. It definitely can be a corrosive tool, and it can definitely portray reptiles in a bad light. But as we mentioned with the crocodile hunter, it can sometimes be done in a good light. And me and you actually have a really long term experience of
Yeah.
using sensationalism to do a lot of good. Um, And that's in our former job that we worked at together when we both worked at the Ararat Ridge Zoo. Me, you, and our buddy Ben, we worked on writing a show and doing a snake show that was called Sensational Snakes. And the whole point of that show was using the sensationalist tactics of like being loud and charismatic, but not doing that with a snake in hand, being respectful of those snakes and not flinging them around and doing all sorts of crazy stuff, handling them responsibly, but using those attention grabbing tactics to deliver the message that these animals are cool by themselves and they don't need you to do that. And it
Mhm.
was kind of this idea of, hyping up this snake as being some potentially dangerous animal. And then when you go to deliver the facts, you'd go, this is a ball python. It's capable of moving at a blinding speed of up to 1 mile per hour. And, if it were to bite you, it would hurt your feelings and mildly inconvenience your day. And it gets people thinking. They're like, oh, I kind of thought he's going to say, like, this thing was dangerous, but, like, that's kind of funny. It's not really
Oh
dangerous
yeah.
at all. And so using that sensationalism, it can be done in a good way. And I think that's something
So
that's
well.
important.
One of
Yeah.
my favorite things to do in programs like that today. I was doing it at the church with the indigo snake last night.
Hmm.
Thankfully, it bit my girlfriend's hand and not me when I was doing this.
Yeah.
Was I will take the snake and say, every time the number one question people ask you have a snake out is, does it bite? Yeah, absolutely, it could bite anytime that it wanted to. And in fact, if it were to bite me right now, we're going to pretend this hairbrush was a snake. If it were to bite me right now and it was a bad bite, like up here on the face,
Hmm.
what I would have to do, I would have to end this program early and rush myself straight to the McDonald's and get a little sundae to make my
Yep.
feelings feel better. That would be about it.
Yeah.
And
It's kind
so
of
you can play it up. You
yeah.
can dig into that sensationalist aspect,
Hmm.
but still throw some water on the fire after.
Yeah, if this snake were to bite you, you might need an ice cream cone and a pat on the back. But other than that, you'd be just
Yeah.
fine. And so like that's kind of the idea of like if you want to use sensationalism, just be careful about how you're doing it. Don't use sensationalism to promote things that aren't true. Use that attention grabbing technique to promote things that are true and that are positive. Reflecting light. And that's a lot of what we plan to do with this show. Is we plan to use sensational storytelling to portray a positive light on these animals. We just did it with the man-eating snake episode.
Mhm.
We used a very sensational and suspenseful story in the beginning and a lot of these crazy stories about these animals to ultimately arrive to the point of like, yeah, they're not that dangerous. They're pretty cool.
Yeah,
That's about it.
absolutely.
And so like that's the kind of the idea of like the way to do that properly. But I think we've covered sensationalism pretty well, and I think we've covered really most of the show pretty well. So I want to go to our kind of last segment here.
I think it ties in really well with our last segment.
Yeah. So
To kind
Luke,
of
if you
play
want to
off
go ahead
that
and
point,
start us off,
which is, does the attention glorify these animals?
glorify criminals.
Criminals. Oh
Helps
yeah,
if you read the show sheet
listen,
correctly.
I was,
Just
but I had my
just so
phone
you guys
way
know,
too
we're
far
not
away.
doing this whole thing off the top of our head. We do have show sheets. We do have notes. We're not professionals, but we try to be.
We
You
try.
know, so
But
helps if
does
we
it
can read.
glorify criminals? And I mean, again, kind of what we were talking about with Tom Crutchfield, people are going to make their own opinions.
Yeah.
People are going to make opinions. They're going to glorify them in a hideous light or a great one. I'll
Yeah.
give it that. But yeah, it's going to really be up to the individual viewer of that program, kind of circling back to the influencers we were talking about there. People jumping on top of snakes, the people free handling there. Some people, like you and me, we don't like it. We
Mhm.
put not interested on there, but a lot of people do.
Yeah.
So absolutely, it can glorify creators as well as criminals in this documentary. They have a
Mhm.
show made about them now.
Yeah.
I don't have a TV show made about me. I wouldn't
Yeah.
even want a TV show made about me.
Yeah. One thing that I think is pretty interesting is you see in the trailer one of them says specifically, if you've never experienced a true rush or high. I'm messing this quote up bad, but if you want to experience a true high or rush, try smuggling a few turtles or whatever. I'm like,
Yeah.
what? What are we do? Like,
What are
I
we
get why
talking
that's in there.
about?
I get that that's sensational, but like,
Yeah.
that is one of my actual main concerns. Is it may glorify that to some people. Some
Mhm.
people, their takeaway from this show may be, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat. Maybe I should look into that. And so I hope that's not the case. But yeah, I think you make a good point of like it. You know what? I made a good point because I'm the one who put that on the show sheet. You said my
Mhm.
point, but you made a good point reading my line I put on there.
Well,
So
I'm going to steal another one then because we've
okay.
already seen this happen with the documentary.
Mhm.
The same creators who made this one made, as we mentioned earlier, they made the Tiger King. Look now, I'm hoping, being the pessimist that I am today, I'm hoping that we do not have another global pandemic when this comes out, that this doesn't become as popular as the Tiger King is there,
Yeah.
because you had people writing fan mail to this man in prison
I
talking
mean, we
about how
do
much
have the
they love the
cyclospora
show.
bacteria, the cyclospora parasite. So
The
might have
what?
the cyclospora parasite. It's on the lettuce, the poop
Oh,
bug.
yeah.
It's making
Hmm.
everybody poop themselves. I mean, we might have a true pandemic in that. You want to
Yeah.
talk about toilet paper being hard to find then?
But no, look at how much of a fan base and following a man who had already been, I forget what the exact wording of the conviction was there, but attempted hiring the hitman
Hmm.
is a glorified term there,
Yeah,
but attempted to arrange the murder of somebody. He's
yeah,
in prison for it. He was, involved in drugs and things like that, and people loved it and
yeah.
loved him. And I mean, I remember swiping on Instagram and seeing like Joe Exotic, he's become very responsive to his fan mail in light of the Tiger King and all that. And yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely, absolutely, it can glorify them.
Yeah. And I think you're looking at the ability to glorify smugglers and stuff like that. I mean, do you believe when you're looking at it, do you believe that this show could be the next Tiger King but for reptiles? Do you think this will be the reptile version of that, or do you think it'll be different?
I'm certainly hoping it will be different.
Mm,
I think it definitely has the potential to be. Like I said at the beginning there, I'm really hoping, with the Tiger King, you didn't see a lot of positive influencers and positive people who are doing really good work with big cats.
yeah.
And so I have not seen what is the chimp one called? The
Chimp
chimp
crazy.
the chimp crazy. I've not watched
Yeah.
that one. I do want to. It does sound entertaining. But maybe this one is a little bit more like this. I'm really hoping we get some positive light on reptile keepers in this and not just focusing on the bad.
Mm. Now, I will say one thing. Sorry, I'm getting some things together I wasn't planning on talking about, but I will say one thing, and that is history does matter. And the
Hmm.
things that are going to take place in this will largely be about history and it'll largely be about known history and things that we've already known existed. And a lot of lawmakers and a lot of laws that exist now exist because these things happened and
Yeah.
they knew about it already. So, like, a lot of this won't be shocking, I think, to anyone in state fish and wildlife and stuff like that. But if you want to learn about this history and things like that, there's also ways to do that that aren't going to glorify or have any risk of glorifying these smugglers. Great way to do that: books. Read a book. I hate reading. These books are good. I actually like reading these, and reading about this history is something that's been incredibly interesting to me. And the reason why I've been wanting to read about it is the famous quote that's a history that is forgotten is a history that's doomed to be repeated.
Hmm.
And if we forget where we came from, we're doomed to fall right back into the same thing. So, the book that I just showed is The Dragon Traders: A Collective History of the Reptile Trade in America and the Age of Herpetoculture. Great book. Another one I've been reading is Stolen World. I'm not done with this one yet. Stolen World is a fantastic book as well, so I definitely recommend those. I've also been reading The Lizard Man by Russ Gurley, and I plan on reading The Lizard King, which The Lizard King is kind of what this documentary is loosely based off
Hmm.
of. But learn about the hobby we are involved in because this hobby involves living animals and it is something that history is going to be extremely important in. You need to know if you're breeding a species, you should be interested in the origin of that species coming into captivity. Did they come in small numbers? Did they come in high numbers? Is genetic diversity going to be incredibly important to you because they came in small? Or like learning things like that is important. So learn your history, do some reading, do some research. Some of these books are probably available in audiobooks. If you hate reading, you can probably get it read to you. And nowadays there's all sorts of avenues for things like that. We've already discussed it, but pretending these things didn't happen isn't productive and isn't going to get anywhere. If we pretend these things didn't happen, that means that mistakes are going to be made and we're not going to learn from them. Mistakes are significantly worse if no lesson is learned. But if you learn your lesson from a mistake and you improve because of those, great. If you learn a lesson and improve because of someone else's mistake made 60 years ago, infinitely better.
Hmm.
infinitely better. Learn from the people who came before us. Learn from people who made mistakes, even if what they did at the time wasn't considered a mistake, wasn't considered wrong. Learn from it. One of the things that I saw in my reading is, talking about the baby alligator care. It was recommended to feed them like milk and some sort of alcoholic beverage. I don't remember what it was, but it was like that was what they said to feed those alligators. And they said if you feed them this, no matter how much you give them, they'll never outgrow their habitat and they'll be the perfect size, small pet forever. They never grow in captivity. Yeah, because you're giving them no nutrition. So learn from that. And that's where a lot of this stuff came from. And ultimately, like, be involved in the legal side of things. If you want to make sure you're not breaking the law, be aware of the laws that exist in your area. Don't just hope that someone's going to not sell you an animal you shouldn't have or anything like that. Make sure that you're aware of the laws, in the state that you live in, and participate in getting to know. You don't have to like blow up the inbox of your state fish and wildlife or anything like that, but talk to them. Don't be shy. Follow them on social media. And my biggest thing is, if you have nothing to hide, why should you keep your cards close to your chest? Why should you do that? If you have nothing that you're trying to hide, there's no reason for that. And being open and having these conversations with them can be incredibly productive. One thing I've made a point to do is I have gotten to know my state fish and wildlife. I've talked to our email, like our state permit biologist. I can call her whenever I want. I can email her whenever I want. If I have a question about the legality of something, I can go, hey, I'm trying to figure out if I can have this. Can I have this? And we'll sit there, we'll work it out. And she'll be like, nope, can't have it. And I go, okay, thank you very much. You have a great day. I don't argue with her. I don't do anything like
Hmm.
that. I just say, thank you for your time and I appreciate you, because these laws are in place for a reason. And ultimately, when you learn about the history of herpetoculture and the history of reptiles in captivity, my biggest takeaway has been the laws should probably be more strict than they are right now. Now, I'm glad they're not, because it allows us to do what we do now. And I think we operate very well within the laws that we have today. But it would have been totally justifiable for the lawmakers to drop the hammer on captive reptile care even harder than they did.
Hmm.
Especially when you think about the fact that we are not, I don't want to say deserving, that's not necessarily the right word, but we're not entitled to reptiles in captivity. We mentioned in the beginning, but we're not entitled to owning these animals. It's a privilege to get to work with them, a privilege to get to own them. And if laws take away our ability to own them because we mess it up, that's on us. That's our fault. So if you want the community to be something good, it is up to you to make it that. So work with your local fish and wildlife, work with your state fish and wildlife, whatever it may be. And if you want a law changed, look into the legal system. When people are upset about laws that exist today outside of herpetoculture, they propose for a change. There's some laws I don't like in Kentucky. And so because I didn't like those laws, I reached out to them and I said, hey, can we work to try and find something that makes more sense? And maybe they'll change, maybe they won't, but I've learned a whole lot more about the process along the way. And I've gotten to know my state fish and wildlife. It's been incredibly productive. So that's my long-winded kind of closed the segment of the documentary there. But Luke, do you have anything else you want to add on to any of that I just said, or anything with the documentary?
Nope, I'm totally good.
You're good. Well, we do appreciate you guys if you've stuck it out with us and watched us this far. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. Like I said, if you enjoy content like this, we do plan on recording more videos and recording more podcasts that will be this style and kind of diving into history. We'll probably get a lot more specific and we'll break down specific stories of like specific importers who may have done things the correct way, specific importers who did things the wrong way. And ultimately, we want to be a reptile positive podcast that highlights those things and then shows where we've grown from then. And that's what we hope this documentary accomplishes as well. So if you've enjoyed it, please be sure to subscribe if you're on YouTube or follow us if you're on Spotify, and be on the lookout because we may be on more platforms in the future. But other than that, we hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day and we thank you for joining us.
Of course, have a good one.